All right, let's jump into this deep dive on Thai real estate. You thinking about buying property in Thailand, right? And you sent over a ton of articles and websites all about it. So we're going to break it all down, give you the cheat sheet, you know.
Definitely a good idea to be prepared. Buying property is a big decision anywhere, especially in another country.
So true. And one thing that really stood out was this whole land ownership thing. Foreigners can't own land. I mean, what?
Yeah, it throws people off. It's one of the first things that surprises people. You can't directly own land, but you're not totally shut out. Condos, for example, you can own those.
So, like, I could buy a condo in Bangkok.
You absolutely could. But there's this rule, the 49% rule. In any condo building, foreigners can't own more than 49% of the units. The other 51% has to be Thai-owned.
So I'm buying the condo itself, but not the land underneath.
Exactly. And this is where it gets kind of tricky. And this is where, looking for legal advice is key.
Yeah.
From someone who knows Thai property law. Right. I think you're already thinking about this from your notes.
Oh, for sure. I've got a note here about leasehold agreements. Is that the way to go if you want more control?
It's an option to explore, definitely. Leaseholds let you lease the land, usually for 30 years, and sometimes you can renew. But you got to be careful. You need to make sure the lease terms are super clear and understand what happens with stuff like inheritance and subletting. It's not as simple as it sounds.
So, yeah, better talk to a lawyer about that. I have
No.
another question, too. What about starting a Thai company? Can you own land that way?
People try that, but it's not that easy.
Yeah.
Foreign-owned companies have their own set of rules if they want to buy land. You usually have to prove that you're using the land for a business, not just for yourself. Plus, running a company in Thailand has its own legal stuff and financial stuff to think about.
Okay, so more complicated than it seems. So let's imagine we figured out the legal stuff. What's the property market in Thailand like right now?
Well, the good news is it's bouncing back after that pandemic slowdown. We're actually seeing some good projections for this coming year.
Promising. You've got something here about a 3.7% increase in property transfers. That's good, right?
It's a good sign. And if you do your research, you can definitely use that to your advantage. But, interest rates and inflation, those are all in the mix too.
Right. So it's not just about the price. Got to look at the whole financial picture. So speaking of finances, how do foreigners actually buy property in Thailand? Is it all cash up front or can you get a loan?
That's where it gets a little tricky again for foreigners. Mortgages are a possibility. Thai banks do offer them, but not all of them are, let's say, foreigner-friendly. Some have stricter rules or maybe higher interest rates.
So I can't just walk into any bank and get a loan. Are there any specific banks you'd recommend checking out?
It really depends. Your situation, the property you're looking at. A financial advisor who knows overseas mortgages would be a good person to talk to. They can help you compare the different options and terms.
That makes sense. Okay, so another note I have here is something about developer financing. What is
Yeah.
that?
That can be a good alternative, especially if you can't get a regular bank loan. Basically, the developer themselves gives you the loan. Often they have more flexible terms, but you have to look at the interest rates and all that. Sometimes it's not as good as a bank loan.
Got it. So another thing where expert advice is key. It seems like buying in Thailand is less about making quick decisions and more about planning it all out carefully.
You've got it. It's a big investment, right? And having the right people on your side, lawyers, financial advisors, all that can make a huge difference.
Okay, so we've got our finances sorted, legal team ready, and we're ready to start looking at places. Where are the hot spots in Thailand's property market right now?
That's the fun part. Your notes mention a few places you're thinking about, so let's start there. What are you thinking? City or beach? Busy or laid back?
That's a good question. I think I'm drawn to the city, the energy, but I also want a place with culture and history.
Bangkok and Chiang Mai, right? You circled those in your notes. Those are great choices. Bangkok, it's the heart of Thailand, so vibrant, a mix of everything. And Chiang Mai, it's more laid back, focused on art and tradition, and closer to nature.
Both sound amazing, but there's a part of me that can't resist those beautiful beaches.
Of course, wouldn't be. Phuket and Pattaya, those are popular if you want coastal living. Phuket is known for its luxury and amazing beaches, while Pattaya has a mix of beaches, nightlife, and it's a little more affordable.
Okay, so we've got bustling cities and gorgeous beaches, but choosing the right location isn't just about the vibe, right? What about practical stuff?
You're right. Your notes actually mention some important things to think about, and they're important for both your lifestyle and how much your investment might be worth later. What are your thoughts on those?
Things like good healthcare, international schools, if I ever wanted to rent the place out. And even reliable transportation and infrastructure.
Yeah.
Those are important. Right.
Exactly. Those can really affect your quality of life and the value of your property in the long run. Like if you're thinking about Bangkok being close to the SkyTrain or the subway, that's a big plus. Makes life easier, and it's good for property value too.
I'm seeing how location is more than just finding a pretty place. It's about finding a place that really fits your lifestyle.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between your dreams and the practical stuff.
Okay, let's say we found a location, finances are sorted, and we're ready to actually buy. What are the steps? What does buying property in Thailand really look like?
First things first, you need a good real estate agent, someone who really knows the local market.
So, step one, find an agent. Check. Then what?
Your agent will help you find properties that you might like, but remember, pictures can be deceiving, right? You got to visit the properties yourself, walk around the neighborhood, and ask questions. Lots of questions.
So, it's like dating. Don't just swipe right based on the photos. You got to meet in person to see if there's a real connection.
Uh-huh. Exactly. And when you find a place you love, you make an offer. If they accept, you usually put down a reservation deposit to hold the property.
Okay, things are getting serious. What happens after the deposit?
That's when the lawyers get to work. They do what's called due diligence, checking the deed, making sure the seller can actually sell the property and that there are no problems with it.
Purpose like what?
Things like mortgages, or if someone else has a claim on the property. You don't want any surprises later on.
Right. Better safe than sorry. So the lawyer does their thing, then what?
If everything looks good, you sign a contract. It has all the details of the sale, all the legal terms. Your lawyer will go through it with you, explain everything, and make sure you're protected.
Okay, so I've got my agent, my lawyer, the contract, it's a team effort. What about me? What should I be doing during all of this?
Well, besides keeping an eye on exchange rates, ask questions. Anything you're unsure about, ask. About the property, the contract, the whole process.
Good point. There's no such thing as a stupid question when it comes to a big investment like this.
Exactly. It's better to ask and be in the know than to just assume and regret it later.
Well said. So let's say everything goes smoothly. I find my dream property, sign the papers, and I've got the keys. What's next? What's it actually like to live in Thailand as a property owner?
That's a great question, and that's exactly what we'll talk about in the next part of our deep dive. We'll cover the costs, the responsibilities of owning a property, what it's like to live in Thailand, and even some investment opportunities you might be interested in.
Oh, investment opportunities. This is getting exciting.
All right, welcome back to our Thai property deep dive. I feel like we've learned so much already, from the ins and outs of the legal stuff to figuring out finances. Now let's imagine we've actually bought our dream property in Thailand. What's next? What's it actually like living there?
It's an exciting time for sure, but owning property in Thailand, it's not just about, the house itself. It's about becoming part of the culture.
Right. It's more than just a transaction. You're joining a whole new community. Exactly. And that starts with, well, respecting the local customs and traditions. It's not just about being polite. It's about really appreciating the culture.
I'm all for that. So what are some key things to keep in mind? Besides the way greeting, of course. We talked about that before.
Oh, remember those notes about negotiating with sellers? Well, there's a cultural side to that, too. Thais really value being polite and showing respect, even when you're talking business. Getting angry or raising your voice, that's not going to help.
Interesting. So keeping calm is key, even if things get a little frustrating.
Absolutely. Patience, that's a big thing in Thailand. And it usually pays off. You were curious about connecting with local communities in your notes. I think that's really important.
I agree. I can see myself going to local festivals, checking out the markets, maybe even taking a Thai cooking class or two.
That's the spirit. When you connect with the people, your experience is richer. It helps you really feel like you belong.
Yeah, I get that. It's more than just being a tourist. But let's be honest. What about the language barrier? My Thai is pretty limited right now.
Don't worry, you're not alone. Most people speak English in the touristy areas and big cities. But in the smaller towns, yeah, you might run into some trouble.
So I should probably brush up on my Thai a bit.
Even just learning some basic phrases goes a long way. It shows respect and that you're making an effort. Plus, remember, a good bilingual agent or lawyer can help you with the more complicated stuff.
That's good advice. Okay, so we're embracing the culture, working on our Thai. Now let's talk about the property itself, day-to-day living. We talked about condos, villas, houses. Remind me of the pros and cons again.
So each one offers a different kind of lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right? Condos, they're great for a lot of people, especially if you're a first-time buyer or you want things to be easy.
Right. I can see condos being perfect if you want that low maintenance lifestyle, especially if you're splitting your time between Thailand and somewhere else.
Exactly. And usually, they're more affordable than villas or houses. Plus, they often have things like pools, gyms, sometimes even restaurants right there in the building.
Yeah.
But you might not have as much privacy or space as a separate house or villa.
So it's a trade-off. Convenience versus privacy. What about those luxurious villas? I can just imagine myself relaxing by a private pool.
Villas are definitely a different experience. More space, you feel more secluded. Often they have those private pools and gardens, like you said. Perfect for families or if you like to entertain. But remember, more space means more responsibility and probably higher cost to maintain it.
Ah, so true. More space, more things to take care of. What about houses then? Where do they fit in?
Houses are kind of a middle ground between a condo and a villa.
Yeah, a mix of both worlds.
Exactly. More privacy than a condo, usually a garden or some outdoor space. But they might need more upkeep than a condo, especially if it's an older house.
Okay, so it really comes down to what kind of lifestyle you want and how much time and effort you're willing to put in.
You got it. And speaking of time and effort, one thing people often talk about in Thailand is Thai time.
Thai time. Okay, that sounds intriguing. What does that even mean?
Well, things in Thailand, they tend to move a little slower than in some Western countries. It's not that people aren't efficient, it's just a different approach to, time and deadlines.
Interesting. So being patient is important, not just in negotiations, but in everyday life.
Absolutely. It's about going with the flow. Now, I know you're interested in investment opportunities. We talked about that a little before.
Definitely. I think there's a lot of potential in Thailand's property market.
You're right. It's become a really popular place for real estate investors. And for good reasons.
So it's not just about finding a home. I could potentially make some money too. Tell me more about these investment opportunities.
One of the most common strategies is what's called buy-to-let. You buy a property and then rent it out to make money.
Right. So like buy a condo in a touristy area or a city center and rent it out to vacationers or people who are living there.
Exactly. And remember those rental yields we talked about. In some areas, they can be pretty good. Cities like Bangkok and Chiang Mai, with their growing populations and economies, they're popular for buy-to-let investors.
So location is key, once again. What kind of rental yields are we talking about in those areas?
In places like Bangkok, you might see 5% to 8%, but remember, that's not all profit. You have to factor in things like property management fees, maintenance, and times when the property is empty.
Right, of course. Not all profit, there are expenses to consider. What about people who don't want to be hands-on landlords? Is that even possible?
Definitely. You've got property management companies, they'll take care of everything. Finding tenants, fixing things, collecting rent makes life much easier, especially if you're not living in Thailand all the time.
Oh, that's a great option. Now, you mentioned property values going up earlier. Is the market in Thailand expected to keep growing?
Well, it's hard to predict the future, right? But experts think Thailand's real estate has a lot of potential. Things like people moving to cities, infrastructure getting better, and foreign investors coming in, those are all good signs.
So there's a chance my investment could be worth more over time.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
But like with any investment, there are risks. The market can change, the economy can change, even politics can affect things.
Okay, so stay informed and be realistic.
Exactly. And don't put all your eggs in one basket. Diversify your investments.
Now, we talked about taxes before, but let's talk about them specifically for investment properties.
Okay, I'm ready. Taxes. What are the main things I need to know about taxes on rental income and capital gains?
So in Thailand, your rental income is taxed like your regular income. The good news is you can deduct expenses like property management fees and repairs.
So those expenses aren't just a pain, they can actually lower my taxes.
You got it. And when you sell a property, the capital gains tax depends on how long you owned it. If it's more than 5 years, you get a lower tax rate. Okay, I'm seeing a pattern here. Hold for 5 years, lower taxes.
You're catching on.
Yeah.
Now, I know sustainable living is important to you. We talked about that before, remember?
Yeah, definitely. Finding a property that's good for the environment, that's important to me.
Well, you're in luck. Thailand is really going green, and you can see that in the property market too.
Tell me more. What exactly makes a property eco-friendly in Thailand?
It's a lot of things, really.
Ah.
Energy-efficient designs and appliances, sustainable building materials, even community programs to reduce waste.
So it's not just a few gimmicks, it's a whole approach.
You got it. And they even have these green building certifications, LED and TGBI. They set the standards for building and running these eco-friendly properties. More and more buyers and renters are looking for those certifications.
So if I want an eco-friendly property, I should look for those certifications.
Definitely. And even after you move in, there are things you can do yourself to live more sustainably.
Like what?
Simple things. Use energy-efficient appliances, get low-flow shower heads, just be mindful of how much water and electricity you use. And a lot of developers are already putting in things like solar panels and rainwater harvesting systems.
Wow, that's impressive. Thailand seems to be really leading the way when it comes to sustainable development.
They are. People are becoming more and more aware of the environment, and you can see that in the real estate market too.
I love that. Now, before we finish up this deep dive, I want to circle back to retiring in Thailand.
Ah, yes. Spending your retirement years in paradise.
Exactly. We talked about some popular spots, but what about the practical stuff? Visas, healthcare, cost of living.
Well, if you want to retire in Thailand legally, you'll need a special visa. It's called the non-immigrant OA visa, or sometimes just the retirement visa.
Okay, tell me more. What are the requirements?
Usually you have to be over 50, have enough money in a Thai bank account or a steady pension, and you need health insurance. The rules can change, though, so it's always best to double-check with the Thai embassy or consulate where you live.
Got it. Age, finances, and insurance. Check, check, check. What about healthcare? That's a big one for retirees.
Healthcare in Thailand is excellent, especially in the big cities. They have internationally accredited hospitals and clinics, and it's much more affordable than in many Western countries.
That's good to know. And how about the cost of living in general? Can you live comfortably in Thailand without spending a fortune?
It really depends on your lifestyle, of course.
Yeah.
But overall, the cost of living in Thailand is lower than in many Western countries, especially if you're not living in the most expensive cities.
So it's all about finding that balance between location, lifestyle, and how much you want to spend.
Exactly. Now, before we wrap things up, you had some questions about off-plan properties and those new developer projects, and that's where things get really interesting.
Ooh, I can't wait to hear more about that. That's definitely something I want to explore further. Okay, we're back for the final part of our Thai property deep dive. We've covered so much, from the legal stuff to the culture to sustainable living. Now it's time to talk about those off-plan properties and new developer projects. They really caught my eye in your research, so what's the deal with those?
Off-plan properties, they're a hot topic in Thailand, especially if you're looking for a good investment. Basically, you're buying the property before it's even built.
So you're buying the potential, right?
And the price is usually lower than what it'll be when the project is finished, especially in areas where property values are going up quickly.
I can see the appeal. But I'm guessing there are risks too, right? What if things don't go as planned?
Of course, there are risks with anything. Construction can get delayed, the market can change, sometimes the finished product isn't what they promised.
Okay, so due diligence is super important. What should I be looking for when considering these off-plan investments?
First, look into the developer. See what their track record is like. Look for developers who have a good reputation, who have finished projects on time and within budget.
So do your homework on the developer. What else?
The contract is super important. You need to understand everything in it, payment schedules, when it's supposed to be finished, what happens if there are delays, and get a lawyer to look it over, someone who specializes in real estate. They can spot any problems or things that might not be good for you.
Reputable developer, check the contract, lawyer on my team, got it. Now, how do off-plan properties compare to resale properties? What are the pros and cons of each?
Well, with off-plan, the potential for the price to go up is a big plus, like we said. And you can often customize some things, like finishes or layouts, before they even start building. But with resale, you can see exactly what you're getting. You can walk through the property, check out the neighborhood, even talk to people who live there.
So off-plan, you're buying into the potential, while resale is more about what you see is what you get. Makes sense.
Exactly. And off-plan properties often have these payment plans that can be helpful for buyers. But if you need a place to move into right away, obviously, resale is the better choice.
This is all so helpful. Now, I want to touch on sustainable living again. We talked about how Thailand is embracing eco-friendly housing. Are there any particular developers or projects that are doing a really good job with this?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There are more and more developers in Thailand who are really serious about sustainability. And it's not just about the marketing. They're putting their money where their mouth is.
That's awesome. What are some examples of what these sustainable developments actually look like?
Well, you'll see things like solar panels to generate their own energy, rainwater harvesting systems to save water, and some even have those green roofs that help keep the buildings cool and improve the air quality. And it's not just about the buildings themselves. A lot of these developers are also creating programs for the whole community, like waste management, and encouraging people to live in a more eco-conscious way.
Wow, so they're really thinking about the big picture. Are these eco-friendly properties usually a lot more expensive?
Sometimes the initial cost might be a little higher because of the special features, but in the long run, you'll probably save money on your utility bills. Plus, these properties tend to hold their value better, and as more and more people want to live sustainably, they might even increase in value faster than regular homes.
So it's not just good for the environment, it's also a good financial decision. I love it when those two things go together.
Exactly. Being sustainable and making financial sense, those two things are definitely becoming more connected.
It's inspiring to see Thailand taking the lead in this area. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's your final advice for someone who's seriously thinking about buying property in Thailand?
I would say be excited about the possibilities, but also be careful and informed. Do your research, get advice from experts, and most importantly, choose a property and location that really fits your lifestyle and what you want for the future.
I couldn't have said it better myself. It's been awesome exploring all of this with you. I've learned so much, and I bet our listeners feel the same way. Remember, buying property in Thailand, it's not just about bricks and mortar, it's about starting a whole new chapter in your life. So go for it, explore your options, and who knows, maybe we'll bump into each other on a Thai beach someday.